On this edition of City Profile, we'll be talking with one of our newest commissioners. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to City Profile. I'm Tom Butler, and it is my pleasure today to be able to talk to Sara Stewart Holland. I know you're not a brand new commissioner because you were elected and began office in January, but it's the first time we've had you here in the studio, so welcome and thank you for coming today.
Thank you. I'm the newest commissioner, that's for sure.
You are the newest commissioner, and I want to get a little bit of background for you. What motivated you to be into politics? But first, before we do that, tell me a little bit about yourself and your family, and have you been in Paducah a long time or a short time?
I am a fifth generation Paducah native. My family has been in Paducah a long time. I was born and raised here. I attended Heath High School and then graduated and left to live in Lexington, where I attended Transylvania University, North Carolina, where my husband attended Duke Law, and then Washington, D.C., where I attended law school at American University. And then when it became time to start a family, I wanted my children to be Kentuckians. I'm an 8th generation Kentuckian, so I wanted them to be 9th generation Kentuckians. And it was very important to me that they be born and raised here. And so I convinced my husband, who's from Atlanta, to move back to my small hometown of Paducah, Kentucky. And we moved back in 2009. And I had 3 boys in pretty short order, and then decided that I really wanted to serve the town that had served me so much growing up and was being so welcoming to my family and such an amazing place to raise my boys. I thought it was time for my generation to step up and serve at the city commission and the city government level, because if we want Paducah to grow and thrive so that our children want to move back here, it's important that we have a say in the future and the decisions being made.
Cool. I also graduated from Heath High School. I didn't know, too bad.
1999.
Well, mine was a little before that, 20 years, but anyway. So how does he like Paducah coming from the big city of Atlanta? And is it culture shock for him?
Well, a little bit. I mean, I remember when we first moved back from Washington, D.C., we played a lot of guess how much this costs. We would guess how much milk costs. Guess how much his haircut costs. But, Paducah has grown a lot since we moved back in 2009. So we have a growing food scene, we have craft breweries, we have music, so we don't really feel like we're missing out on anything except for an incredibly high cost of living.
Right.
And, Sarah Bradley, the chef at Freight House, was just profiled in the Chicago Tribune, where she left sort of the high-flying food scene to come back here and start Freight House, and she said, life is just simpler here. And I thought, that is it in a nutshell. I mean, my husband and I both, and even Nicholas, who came from big cities and was skeptical, sees that the way of life here in Paducah is so simple and so much easier than big cities, especially with kids. When we go to the big city, when we go back to DC or I travel some for work, I go to LA or New York, everything is so complicated. It's how do we get there? How long is the traffic going to take? How much is parking? Is there parking? It's just exhausting. Anywhere I want to go in Paducah, it takes 5 minutes to get there. I got to think about it 5 minutes before I leave. So we really love it here. And, I tell people, when we lived in Washington, D.C., the first thing people ask you is, who do you work for? And when we move back to Paducah, the first thing people ask you are, do you have any kids? Where do you go to church? And, it's just such an intense sense of community, and we both really, really love it. And we can just afford a better, richer lifestyle here because the cost of living is so low.
Right, and with the children here, it seems like that it's a good place to raise kids.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no waiting and 6-month wait list to get into preschool where they interview your child. I mean, I'm not built for that kind of thing. So, here we have amazing preschools, we have amazing public schools. I could not be more pleased with Paducah Public Schools. My children both attend Clark. I absolutely love it. And, it's just like everything else. It's easier.
And you mentioned the traffic. That's something that people that live in big cities, they can't understand. I have a friend that lived in St. Louis, and he had the exact same amount of distance to cover as I do every day, and every day it took him an hour and a half to get to and from work.
Life is too short.
And it takes me 15 minutes.
You only get so many trips around the sun. I don't want to spend it commuting.
Absolutely. So you said that you wanted your generation to get into the political scene, to help Paducah to grow. Thinking back, what was your philosophy on, did you think you could get elected? Were you confident? And then how did you go about devising a campaign?
Well, and I want to say too that I'd always wanted to run for office. And I make a point of saying that, particularly as a female elected official, because I think it's very important for young girls to hear women say, I wanted to be in politics. And I did. I wanted to be in politics from a very young age. I think that I always saw it as a way to serve and a way to influence and a way to ask important questions and be curious about the place that you lived. And so when I was a political science major in college, and when I went to law school, and then after law school, I worked in Washington, D.C. for a presidential campaign and a United States senator. And so, I mean, I had experience in big campaigns, and I also, once I moved back and after I had my boys, I went through a training program called Emerge, which is a Democratic training program for women considering public office. And it was an incredibly empowering experience. Their applications are open right now for any women watching that would like to check it out. And you know, you go for weeks and you learn about how to campaign. You learn about field work and marketing and how to build your network and how the vote, you know, you learn all these skills that can seem really intimidating the first time you're running for office. And so I think because of the really great training I got through Emerge, I did feel like I had a good shot. I knew what needed to be done. I had an incredible support system with my husband and my family who allowed me to go out and do it. I had amazing friends and family and supporters who donated money to my campaign so that I could get my name out there. And then I just hit the ground. I knocked on 5,523 doors over the course of several months. And it was not only something I did because I thought it was necessary to get elected, but if I'm going to serve the people of Paducah, I'd like to talk to them first and see what they are concerned about. And so it was so incredibly empowering and interesting and just an incredible experience to knock on those doors, to see the people of Paducah, to hear people say, I love this town. And you know, I had so few negative experiences. Primarily people were caring and thoughtful and devoted to this place, and I just really loved it. And I think that knocking on people's doors, looking them in the face and asking them for their vote really made a difference.
I think that would be kind of interesting. A little scary too. You said you didn't have many negative experiences. So what do you think was a couple of the most important things you learned from talking to the people that you might not have if you didn't choose that method of campaigning?
You know, I think that for the most part, people in Paducah, with regards to this, you know, the city leadership, have really realistic concerns and questions. You know, they are not expecting for us to deliver a Toyota plant tomorrow. You know, they want us to take good care of the parks. I got a lot of requests for recycling. I got a lot of concerns about spending at the riverfront and stormwater flooding. You know, things that really the city government is concerned with and had already been talking about. And people just wanted to feel heard, and people wanted to feel like there was transparency with these questions and with these conversations. And so I think I just learned that, there weren't any great surprises, honestly. People were concerned about things that I already thought were an issue, agreed with some of my suggestions about how we could go about dealing with them. And like I said, just really devoted to this place.
Cool. Let's step back just for a second. You said that you had some training and that you also worked for us. Did you work on a senatorial campaign, or did you work for a senator?
I worked for Hillary Clinton's 2007 presidential campaign, and then I worked for a senator from New Jersey in his actual office, not on his campaign.
And what did those experiences teach you and help you along your way?
Well, I think that the presidential campaign experience was really interesting and empowering to see a woman sort of get up to those heights within politics, and to see how she handled herself, both in good ways and bad ways, and to see sort of the different pieces that it takes to do a campaign, to see the field component, to see the fundraising component, to see the crafting of a narrative about your campaign. And then with regards to working on Capitol Hill, that's just really constituency service. That's what I did. I wrote letters back to constituents about their concerns. I crafted a couple pieces of legislation. I wrote some speeches, just working on the ways, just legislative services, honestly. The nuts and bolts of how you serve your constituency. And it was a very informative experience for sure.
So it's fair to say you are a political junkie.
Yeah, fair enough.
And you told me you don't have cable anymore, so where do you get your news? Do you read newspapers? How do you inform yourself about what's going on without cable? You just broadcast networks and
No,
things
I
like
feel
that?
that cable news is the devil. I cannot consume it. I find it upsetting and ridiculous, and so I don't participate in cable news.
Yeah.
I host a bi-weekly political podcast called Pantsuit Politics with a friend on the opposite end of the political spectrum of mine, and we say no shouting, no insults, plenty of nuance. So what we try to do is approach subjects from all different angles and think, what are we really trying to solve here? Let's take off our team jerseys and realize that we are all served by cooperative conversation, by compromises in goals and how we get there. So what I do, because of the podcast primarily, is try to take in news from several different sources. So I read the New York Times, I read the National Review, I read the Washington Post, I do occasionally read Fox News. So I try to just take in a broad array of information. I read the Paducah Sun every morning. And there's a couple of really good sort of emails I get every morning in my inbox that summarize the day's top stories. So I primarily take in my news from the internet and from different news sources along the internet.
And you said well, you didn't say it this, but I'm going to say a no shouting zone.
No shouting. We do not shout. We do not
Well,
insult.
that's my frustration with cable news, that you expressed your frustration as well, is there's really no discussion. It's who can shout the loudest.
We talked to a person, a really high-profile national reporter, who said that cable news treats agreement as a bug to be fixed. So if you have a representative from each side on a cable news program and they start to agree, cable news treats that as a problem. That's a problem. We need to fix that because people want conflict. People want shouting. And we just refuse to do that. And honestly, I don't think everyone is hungry for that. I think that there are some people who believe that half of America is the problem and their side presents the sole solution. That is not me. That is not a philosophy I subscribe to. I don't think most Americans do either. So we try very hard to think carefully about issues from the perspective of, what do we both want? What do you see as a problem? What do I see as a problem? Where can we agree? Where do we not agree? But just to be thoughtful and considerate, because I personally believe that conversations in that vein, by attempting to think through your own positions and work through disagreements with others, it's not just about politics. Politics is a manifestation about how we feel about a lot of things, right? It can be a self-awareness exercise. It can be an arguably spiritual exercise. I think that working through, why does this upset me so much? Why do I feel so emotionally charged about this issue, can be a really powerful exercise. And if you do it in a place where you're vulnerable and you trust the other person, then you can really, really, really have great conversations.
Well, that sounds so refreshing to me, because I'm kind of a political junkie as well, but I feel like there's no place that I can go to have that kind of conversation.
Well, you should come to Pantsuit Politics
and
subscribe.
I'm going to have to, because I want to hear those kind of conversations with intelligent, reasonable people, not shouting at one another and trying to. Like you said, I just get so frustrated because half the country sees the other half really as evil, and when you start to do that, how can you compromise with evil?
I feel passionately about this. In fact, I spoke about it at a recent City Commission meeting where we had some pretty passionate conversation about the Tillman statue in Lang Park. And I said, the troubling part is not that it's not one movement or the other. The troubling trend in America is that we do view the other side as the enemy. That we can't look at somebody who disagrees with us passionately on a subject and say, you love your kids as much as I love my kids, and we both want this country to succeed. Because if we cannot agree on that, if we cannot stop seeing each other as the enemy, as the downfall of America, then we are in very big trouble.
Yeah, and that's what's so frustrating to many of us, is that we don't see that reasonable conversation that
And I think
you
that one
are
of the
having.
reasons I ran and one of the reasons I so enjoy sitting on the city commission is because it is nonpartisan. And so there is no party leaders in our face or behind the scenes putting pressure on different city commissioners to take a stand and to protect the party interests, and that we don't have to break into teams and fight each other because we're all on the same side and we all want what's best for Paducah, even when we disagree how to get there. And it really changes the conversation. I had a friend who said, I know you two disagree on everything, but you really just get along and work so well and agree on all the issues on the city commission. And I was like, right, that should tell you that all these disagreements don't mean that much, really, when you put, paper to pencil and try to work out solutions. That's what that should tell you, is that we have more in common than we think we do, and that we definitely have the interest together to move forward and have successes.
Very cool. So let's get into Paducah a little bit. There are some issues that are always facing us. From an outside perspective, it seems like we continue to lose population. Is that my perception, or is that reality?
I think that we are gaining population in some important age brackets, primarily my generation. There are very few people of my generation that who didn't move away first and then come back from the people that I spend a lot of time with. So I think that is something we need to make some space for, that maybe Paducah is not the perfect place for somebody who's just graduated college and turned 21, but that we are in an excellent space for people moving into their 30s, starting to have families, wanting some space in their budget and space in their days without commutes to build a different kind of lifestyle. And I think we are succeeding dramatically within that age group. I think we have a really strong case to make that this is a great place to move back and raise a family, because we have so many people like me that say, I did it and it's working out fantastic.
Well, and we need young people.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to have retirees who love the place and want to come and, and spend their time and money here and live here, but you need young people who are enthusiastic and have new ideas and want to see good things
Well,
happen.
and the retirees are the ones who feel passionately about that. They're the ones telling me that. We need young people. We need young people. I'll never forget, I knocked on a gentleman's door over off West Jefferson, and he said, I kept the piece of paper from the primary because you weren't in the, I needed to be in the primary in order to sort of make sure my position was really strong. It would have been great if I was like fourth, because that's how many people are going to win in the general. And he's like, I kept it because we say we want young people, but look, you weren't in the fourth, which turned out to be fine. I still won. But he was very passionate about the fact that particularly that people in Paducah, if they care about growing population, should be voting young people into positions of leadership. And look, they did. They voted for me and for Mayor Harless. And I think that was a powerful statement from this community that says we value the input of young people. We know they're the future of this town, and we want their voices to be heard.
Right, and I think that's a positive thing. Some of the things that you've talked about and that seem to be happening in the city that I think are good. Recycling.
Yes, curbside recycling was definitely something I heard about over and over again as I knocked on doors. And look, most of the other city manager form of governments in the state of Kentucky have curbside recycling, so it was really time for us to catch up and to just make that a priority and to make it happen. As with everything, there might be some sacrifices. We are going to have to make the trade-off with yard waste pickup, which is a service that many locales across Kentucky do not offer. It's a call and we'll come get it and we'll pick up your leave situation. And so we're going to move towards a model that the rest of the state of Kentucky already is using and use those efficiencies, because what we don't want to do is grow dramatically the size of the Public Works Department, increase the cost on the taxpayers. There are efficiencies to be made, there are savings to be made, so that people can, for a very nominal fee, get the service that they very much want.
And well, can you explain that a little bit more to me? Because what I always say is I love new programs, but can we afford them?
Right.
So is it an affordable program, or are we going to have to pay more taxes for it?
No, absolutely. It is an affordable program because we're going to dial back the yard waste pickup. So in the savings by dialing back the yard waste pickup and with a nominal fee, because I think it is important to have a small fee for recycling. I think it's important to have a little bit of buy-in. We don't want it to be unaffordable for anybody. The cost of this fee is about the same amount that I pay right now, a quarter. So you'll pay the same in a year that I pay in a quarter for once a month recycling as opposed to twice a month recycling. So, but we want a little bit of buy-in from the citizens so that they're invested in the program. But no, we will not. We do not want to. We don't want to add it on top of everything else Public Works is and increase the spending. That's not.
So
what we're
is it a
looking for.
choice, or does everybody have to do it?
No, it'll be a subscription service.
Okay, so if my neighbor doesn't want to recycle, they don't have to, and
Right.
if I do, then I can pay a
Right.
small fee, and some people just feel like that's just being a responsible person,
Right.
To recycle.
And many people are
not
doing
waste.
it anyway, either
Yeah.
taking it to the recycling themselves or paying a service, a private service, which I'm doing. So this will offer, I think, a much better alternative.
And just for those people who say, but I like it that I can put my leaves out
I know.
front,"
Everybody
and-
loves their little pile of sticks. We get it. We're hearing a lot. I know. No, it is. And I don't mean to be flippant. I know that service, many people enjoy that service. But for better or for worse, it's not efficient use of city resources to drive through every 2 weeks and pick up small stacks of sticks or small bags of grass clippings. We can use the services and the people that we all use our tax money to pay in much more efficient ways.
Will we still have the composting facility? If
Yes,
you're not
yes,
gonna be
yes.
doing that?
And what we're moving to is a yard waste in which once it's a certain size and a size that's efficient for them to come, then you can call and they will come pick it up.
Okay.
And we will still do leaf pickup as well.
Gotcha. Also, understand we talked earlier, and there's some updating to the 911 system going on. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. The 911 is very technical, but there is a telephony system, a computer system, and I believe the radio system. So there's several different systems that work when you call, when they're dispatched, and the system that puts all that together. And they all need updating. And, one of the primary goals and the primary interest of serving the people of Paducah is safety. And to have an updated 911 system is a top priority of this commission. And so what we're trying to do right now is, updates come at a huge cost. And so we're trying to figure out the best way to do that efficiently, to do that effectively, and to serve as many people as we can.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned safety, because we've been talking about quality of life and things like that, but it's almost behind the scenes until you need it. You don't call 911 until you need it, and then you expect it to be there,
Right.
and you expect it to work. And we've had and are in the midst of having several natural disasters
Yep.
around right now. Recently there was an earthquake in Mexico, and they're still going through that.
Two
And
earthquakes.
2 earthquakes, and big ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are on the New Madrid Fault, and so it's important to me at least, and I expect many of the citizens of Paducah, that we are as prepared as possible for any kind of a disaster
Right.
that we have.
Well, and I think what's important it's a very technical process, but what I would like everyone to think about is that we used to pay for 911 through a fee on people's telephone bills. I don't know about you, but most of my friends, most of my family disconnected their telephone service long ago. And so the pot of money from which we were using to keep these systems up to date has dramatically shrank. And more importantly, because there is a certain age group that primarily keeps their telephone, it's really an unfair burden on that age group. They're paying for a system that everyone is using. And so we need to think about ways that we can use mobile phones and fees on mobile phones to start paying for this service, because the way we used to pay for it is no longer realistic because of the way people use telephone service anymore. So that's something we haven't made any decisions yet. It'll be a long community process, but I do think that's a conversation we need to start having amongst ourselves. This is how we used to pay for it. That's no longer realistic. How do we want to pay for it in the future?
You also mentioned stormwater. I'm not sure I understand all the ins and outs of that. Just a little information about what's happening with stormwater and how it's routed and where it goes and all those things that you're dealing with.
Well,
that
I don't know if
most of
there's
us
a
don't
simple
understand.
explanation, but Our stormwater system has a couple of problems. One is that we have a combined sewer system in large parts of Paducah, which means that our sewer and our stormwater flow through the same pipes. When there is a lot of stormwater, it flows directly into the Ohio River, basically mixed in with the sewer, and that is a problem. As we can imagine, the EPA and the federal government aren't big fans of that, and I'm not either. So that's one problem that we are dealing with in conjunction with the Joint Sewer Agency. They're doing a fantastic job. I'm a little biased, I serve on their board, but they're doing a really great job as we work through that process. The other issue is that our stormwater system doesn't have we don't have a master plan for how to deal with increased floodings in parts of our city. You saw this conversation really come to the forefront with a zoning issue we had on Pecan Drive earlier this year, because that community feels that they've had increasing problems and no one's offering solutions, and that's a huge problem. They deserve to be heard. They are city taxpayers, and they deserve to have their flooding issues dealt with. The first step is a stormwater master plan. And so what we're having right now is a stormwater study. So we have engineers that are much smarter than me coming and surveying all these different neighborhoods with flooding issues and dealing with the fact that, we have a lot of basins and we have a lot of creeks and we're right by the river. So flooding is a huge issue for us. And so the flood wall is not the beginning and end of our trying to deal with flooding.
Right.
And so what the Stormwater Master Plan is going to do is going to try to put together a comprehensive way to deal with that. A comprehensive analysis of how much that's going to cost and ways in order to deal with those increasing costs, because right now there is no source of funding for dealing with stormwater issues, and that's another thing that we're going to have to really have a discussion about as a community, because it is a huge issue for Paducah, and to deal with it effectively we have to stop putting band-aids on it. We need a real solution, and that's hopefully this stormwater master plan or stormwater study is the first step for that.
Got so much more I'd like to talk to you. We have about a minute left in the show, and so let's end on a positive note. Tell us about the quality of life in Paducah. What's the city? Is there a plan? How do you address that in order to keep the young people like we'd like to draw here, the ones we have here?
I think what the Board of Commission under the leadership of Mayor Harless is really trying to do right now, and I'm very, very proud of our work, is to take big picture of to look at the big picture of what Paducah is facing in the next 10, 20, 30 years, and to really start thinking about how do we grow, how do we get from here to where we want to be in 20 years. We're trying to think outside the box. We're trying to formulate new approaches within city government, and I'm very proud of that. I think that we're having transparent conversations. We're not just coming forward and saying we have all the solutions. We're saying we need to start having conversations. What do you guys think? We don't really know the answer. We're not going to come out here and say we have the perfect solution ready for you. Everybody ready? No, we're coming out and we're saying here's some problems we're dealing with. We want you to be a part of the conversation, because I think in the past it's been a lot of this is it, we're moving forward, cool, as opposed to let's have a conversation. We're not going to pretend like we have all the answers, and let's be transparent about the process that we want moving forward and the goal and the place that we're all trying to arrive at.
So the City Commission is listening to the people, going to form the plan for the next 20 years, and hopefully we're going to have a great place to live for.
And we already
as long
have
as
a
we
great
can
place
see.
to live. One of my favorite things Mayor Harless said during the campaign is we can love a place and still acknowledge its problems. And I think that's really important for Paducah. No one loves this town more than me, but you can love a place and still want to improve it.
And a great way to end the show. Thank you so much for being here today with us. We've been talking with Sara Stewart Holland, Paducah City Commissioner. I'm Tom Butler. Join us again next time.